I'm ready to complete the masking now on the Grants. Originally I airbrushed them with the Tamiya paint as a good strong base coat. I always recommend that you put some kind of strong undercoat or base coat if you're going to do any masking with blue tack or even any other sticky substance at all really. The Tamiya paint's really tough, Vallejo's not so tough, and all paint can easily strip off plastic, so a good strong undercoat and making sure that the paint is dried overnight. I gave the Tamiya paint a day to dry, and then the Vallejo paint I gave that a day to dry as well. I did a degree of modulation. It's basically black mixed with some dark blue grey, and I added more of that as I carried upwards with the modulation, and then finished it off with a little bit of London grey. So whatever that is showing there, there's where there should be highlights to match highlights on the yellow, they should be there, and we should still get that same look. I seem to be having problems orientating myself here, sorry folks. Right, there we go. So I'm going to show you how I get these shapes. This one's nearly finished. Now you can see I'm using a cocktail stick, and I am moving the blue tack around. I can push it and pull it, fold it back on itself, flatten it down so the edges are tight to avoid what you would call underspray. And you can see I can make these nice shapes. And then just to finish that off, oh, I can't find the camera. So I finished airbrushing on the sand colour coat. I used Panzer Ace's German highlight to feel grey, Panzer Ace's US highlight US tank crew, and model colour tan yellow. And I started with this and just added in more elements, lighten it up to this it's quite a dark sandy finish, but I want them to look quite different from the Africa core box that I've done. Excuse me. The blue tack came off fine, so I think that's the lesson there, is that give it a good undercoat and make sure that you give it enough time to dry before applying the first coat. Give that some time to dry, and then do the blue tacking. So it seems to have worked fine. There was no paint stripped off at all, which is quite unusual, especially on a plastic kit when you're using blue tack. Now, when I first airbrushed these, I wasn't happy with the final highlight I'd put on it. I had to put more tan yellow on. Now I did that after I took the masking off, so I had to be careful. And I also, just because there was a couple of bits where I did overspray onto the dark colour, I decided to give the whole tanks a slight, very very slight dusting of the tan yellow. It softens things a bit and makes the colour a little less stark against the bright background. So what I'll be doing next with these guys is strengthening the modulation to a degree by brush. It's quite hard to get a good modulation without really complicated masking. On something that is so small. I mean, if you look at the size of that turret and how thin it is. But this one has had some work on it. It will also get a bit of fading, which is just the highlight colour very lightly drawn down across the yellow areas. That will also help unify the modulation, and then I'm also going to do just a little bit here and there on the grey, because that will be needed as well. So I'm going to show you the yellow here on this guy. So just clean my palette, a little bit of paint, now put the tiniest amount of water on the palette. I'm going to draw this white paint along, clean the brush off a bit, and then drag it down, but all over the point of the brush pointing up towards where I want the colour to be strongest. So I'll leave that bit and then come back to it as I've done some more. Clean it off, and how I'm doing that, hopefully you can see that I'm just drawing it through my hand. I put gentle lines as I get towards the shaded area. I'm going to turn it around and do the same on the top of that line. I can draw some of that paint off around here. And I'm basically going to be repeating this around the turret. Brush has gone a bit dry on me. Got to move this paint without delay because it is only quick drying acrylic paint. And then down it goes. I'll accentuate that bit just now. Also needs just a bit under here. Try and soften that transition. And I'm going to repeat this process. Clean that brush a bit, still got some paint on it. Some point having some paint's good, other points you want it clean. I'm not worried about going into any shade area around features such as that hatch. I've gone too strong there, I'll just try to remove that. This isn't a highlight, it's just working on strengthening modulation. Try and feather that. Oops. Far too much paint, excuse me. And then knock it back. Boost the paint in the direction that you want it to go. Too dry. go down the way in the first instance, and then feather up slightly. And I'm going to keep going with that until, for instance, you can maybe see on this turret here, the edges are brighter. There's a transition with the modulation, which will be accentuated again with some streaking. This one I've still got to do quite a lot of the hull. So I'll keep working away on that, and I'll maybe show you the grey modulation next. So I've finished adding all the highlights, strengthening the lighter areas of the modulation. It's quite a time consuming process because of the shape of this tank. There's so many different little areas and panels and angles. It's a much quicker process on something like a T-34 or a Sherman. So it takes a bit of time and a lot of patience to make sure that you're doing it right. You can also see I've added a little bit to the edges of the grey, not a lot at all. In some cases it's the beginnings of an edge highlighting, but just at the tops of panels, a little bit along the running board here, just to help bring that out a bit. And then I decided as well that I was going to add a white line around the dark camo. I wasn't sure if I was going to do that, but I've decided to go ahead and do it. And I think it helps just brighten the whole thing up. I put the line itself directly over the grey area as opposed to the yellow area. I didn't want the camoed area growing in size, and it's also softened the white down because I've just done it in one coat, so it's not an absolute blinding white line. Now the next step, this may or may not come across well on the camera, is to do a little bit of fading, which is just drawing some very careful soft lines from light areas to dark areas across the modulation. It helps soften the darker areas and draw everything together for a better transition. And it's also a little bit of pre-weathering. You can make some of the lines stronger than others, for instance. If you want to, for instance, on the front and the rear of fenders, if you want to add to the streaky, layer the streaky effects later on, that you can do, like for instance with the enamel wash, you can use that a little, and then with specific enamel streaking. So I'm going to show the fading process for you. It's very, very simple. It's just something that you've got to be careful not to overdo. So it's just a very, very soft line, simple as that. As I said, some cases you want the line to be very visible, but in most cases you don't want it to be a clearly defined mark on the hull. It's just a softening, like a fading effect. Larger scale models would use a mixture of all kinds of oil paint colours to achieve this. I'll see if I can zoom in a bit. But on a kit this size, the acrylic paints will do the job for you with no need to worry about complicated techniques. It's just a nice little line. Now, I'm just taking care to have the right consistency. See, I feel my brush is a bit too dry. Let's see. Soft line, you can draw it down from a bolt head, for instance. And this is not a particularly time consuming process, so it's worthwhile doing it because it's going to add to the modulated look. So that's gone in a little bit bright, but that's okay. Doesn't have to be the same over the entire vehicle, as long as it's not too much. So I'll take a couple of minutes to finish that, and then I'm on to tracks, running gear, and at this point, before I put the gloss varnish on, I'm also going to do the tarpaulins and such likes, because they're in a very vulnerable position. They're going to be getting picked up on the side, so I want a bit of protection on them. Otherwise they're really just going to end up getting the paint stripped off them. So a quick recap before I apply the clear coat. I've painted the tarpaulins. They won't appear quite so bright once the clear coat's on. I've also painted the tracks and the running gear, and for this I used Panzer Ace's dark rubber for the wheels. I find that's a very good colour. It's dark enough grey but not black. The base colour for the tracks I used model colour US Olive Drab. It sounds like a crazy idea to use that on something which is basically metallic, but it gives a nice greenish, brownish, greyish, nondescript kind of earthy colour to the tracks, which were then dry brushed with gunmetal. I then picked out the wheel rims, because there's always little mistakes here and there, so I made a point of picking out the wheel rims with the tan yellow, the main colour of the tank. They stand out a bit. Later on I will be applying a brown enamel wash to the wheels and suspension, so they're going to be toned down, but that extra bit of highlight will just help keep that bit of detail. And I should point out, before I applied the clear coat, I've also put a sand coloured weathering wash, enamel wash, over the lower hull, running gear and tracks, just to give it a bit of a sandy look on the lower hull. So these are ready for the clear coat and the decals, and then it's on to the nitty gritty of the detail work, such as tools and weathering. Before I keep focusing on the Grants, I want to show you quickly the Crusaders, because I've decided to do them in a different desert camel colour. Not just the camel blotches being a different colour, but I've used a different base coat as well. These have been brought up to the same stage as the Grants, with the exception of a clear coat, which I'll be moving on to next. So I'll see if I can just come in a bit. So I've used Gemin Highlight Fuel Grey, excuse me, again from Panzer Aces, mixed with US Army Highlight Tank Crew from Panzer Aces again, and then dark sand from model colour, not all went into the airbrush to give a modulated look, and the base colour for the brown is actually it's flat earth, flat earth from model colour with some cork brown. And I've applied everything in the same way as I did with the Grants. Also did some fading, accentuated the modulation at certain points. It's a really complicated kit once again to be doing this, because there's so many different angles. But these I've just had a sand wash applied to the running gear and the tracks, so they're going to get set aside to dry. They'll get a gloss coat, decals, and then they'll soon be catching up with the Grants.